Welcome to the Fast Leader Podcast, where we uncover the leadership life hacks that help you to experience breakout performance faster and rocket to success. And now, here's your host, customer and employee engagement expert and certified emotional intelligence practitioner, Jim Rimbach.
Call Center Coach develops and unites the next generation of call center leaders. Through our e-learning and community, individuals gain knowledge and skills in the 6 core competencies that is the blueprint that develops high-performing call center leaders. Successful supervisors do not just happen. So go to callcentercoach.com to learn more about enrollment and download your copy of the Supervisor Success Path ebook now. Okay, Fast Leader Legion, today I'm excited because I have somebody on the show who is really going to address and uncover really one of the core reasons behind the Fast Leader Show and why it's called the Fast Leader Show. Dr. Liz Bywater grew up on Long Island, New York, and spent the majority of her childhood in the small historic town of Miller Place. She's the middle of 3 children with an older brother in Southern California and a younger sister in New York. Her father was a deeply respected psychoanalyst and her mother a clinical social worker. Both were dedicated to helping others live happier and more successful lives. Throughout her childhood, Liz was heavily involved in leadership activities. She was president of her high school class and held a variety of other top leadership positions, and she absolutely loved those opportunities. Liz graduated at the top of her high school class, then spent 4 extraordinary years as an undergraduate at Cornell University before completing her PhD in clinical psychology. She took her expertise in people and behavior to a variety of settings, working first as a school psychologist, then a clinician in private practice, and finally a strategic confidant to senior executives across the Fortune 50. Dr. Bywater works with top executives and management teams across an array of companies, including Johnson & Johnson, Bristol Myers Squibb, AmerisourceBergen, Biotronic, EMD, Serrano, Nike, Boeing, Thomson Reuters, and more. She provides her clients with her expert guidance and tools for success based on more than 25 years of experience and outlined in her popular book, Slow Down to Speed Up, Lead, Succeed, and Thrive in a 24/7 World. Liz is thrilled at the opportunity to have a positive impact on her clients' lives, and she lives in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, with her teenage son, Jonathan, and cat, Pepper. Her daughter, Anna, is studying international business in nearby Philadelphia. Liz Bywater, are you ready to help us get over the hump?
I am ready. I'm very happy to be here.
Oh, I'm glad you're here. Now, I've given my Legion a little bit about you, but can you tell us what your current passion is so that we can get to know you even better?
Yes, of course. Well, my current passion is twofold. On the personal side, it's all about, where my kids are at and helping them become successful, happy young adults. They're really both on that point of launching into their lives. On the professional front, I'm really enjoying helping executives and leadership teams as they navigate change, which is a very constant theme I see no matter which company I'm working with, whether it's a merger or an acquisition or a leadership change or changes in the economy. You've heard it all. That's what everyone's dealing with right now. And there are lots of ways to really help make that more successful and less overwhelming and stressful.
Okay, and when you say that, I start getting this vision in my head, and all of these different pictures and all this, fast track video and all this stuff starts going crazy. And I start thinking about this whole speed issue and that, I have to learn how to actually move better and faster so I can keep up with all that. But that's not what we're talking about here.
That's not what we're talking about here. That is a very natural and very typical response. And I do see it across the board. And many of my clients now are actually CEOs, and some have been elevated within their current organization. Many are going from one to the next. And so there are so many elements on their plate that they have to think about. How do they establish those early relationships? How do they make sure they have the best team on board? How do they create a sense of unified vision and purpose and help clear off the things that are slowing the organization down rather than speeding it up? So that sense of, wow, it's all going so fast, and how do I navigate it well? Super common, but we really need to talk about what are the ways and where are the right places to slow down long enough to make the best decisions, take the best actions, and speed up where it's really necessary.
And the reality is, when you say all that, if we don't do that, we're actually contributing to this massive anxiety crisis that currently exists in our society.
100% right. There's so much anxiety across the society we're living in. There's anxiety. There are physical ailments. people are missing work, or they're going to work sick and maybe getting their colleagues sick. Family relationships can take a toll, and they often do. There can be a sense of depression that comes with too much work, too much to do, too little time in which to do it. So there are very real personal impacts as well as business impacts to continually going too fast all the time.
And so when we talk about this too fast thing, it may be helpful for us to kind of explain a little bit what we're meaning by that. Because I shared with you a story of a friend of mine who is a technology consultant. What she does is people come to her or hire her to actually go through and determine need from a technology perspective, and then select, even the right vendors, for certain technologies. And so we start talking about, a decision process that requires some internal analysis, external analysis, a whole lot of, deeper levels of understanding and connection. And she says that she can't help greater than 95% of the people that come to her, because the problem is that they come to her in the 12th hour, not the 11th hour, meaning it's way too late, and they're just needing to make a decision and get it done and get it in. And she's like, I can't help you. That's just faster. And you're going to have an outcome that nobody is going to be successful with. And she goes, and I'm just not going to be part of that. And really, that's what we're talking about here. This rapid acceleration piece, all of these components, we're just pushing. And ultimately, we don't end up moving fast at all.
100% correct. And it's a great example. And I see it in a lot of different contexts, whether it's, a technology initiative, whether it's hiring your executive team, whether it's making a decision to buy or sell a company, whether it's a decision to take the next leadership position. I mean, we could go on and on about the types of really important decisions that are made way too fast, without sufficient deliberation, without sufficient conversation with the people who will be involved in making something successful, without taking what I call a strategic pause, which is really, really important. It's not a luxury. It's actually the opportunity to be thoughtful and deliberate and appropriately cautious in terms of, is this a decision and an action that will get us the better, faster, more sustainable results? Or is it something that will lead us so far down the path that is going to cost us time, energy, money, political capital, all of that? Because, as your colleague was saying, when you get there the 11th, 12th hour, the mistakes have already been made, the investments have been made, and it's almost impossible to undo that kind of damage.
Well, and even as you're talking, and I start thinking about some of these, conversations, and even, hey, I'm even guilty of the things that we're talking about. I think we're all, nobody's immune from this.
Correct.
So when I start thinking about the ways that we go about coping and defaulting, it just contributes to the problems. And there's a lot of biases that take place. And one of the biggest ones that I see that kind of aligns with this is people kind of look at each other and see what they're doing and say, oh, I need to do that. That is like one of the worst defaults I think I've seen, and that we often do every single day. How do we keep ourselves from falling into some of these pitfalls?
Well, first of all, you're right. One of the sort of default mechanisms is, if you haven't had enough time to think and create a plan, is to look to your left and your right and see what everybody else is doing. And most of the time, they haven't taken the time to really think through what's the correct decision. So then everybody's doing something either equally wrong or wrong in different directions. Another thing that a lot of my clients fall into, and again, I think we all can do this, is, well, it's always been done this way. We've always worked with a client in this certain way. We've always sold our product in this way. We've always interacted with the FDA in this way. Whatever it might, we've always written all of these reports. And this is the way it's always been done is almost never a good recipe, because things change and you have to create change. You have to get out ahead of things. You can't just keep dragging along because that's the way it's always been done. So, again, the solution sounds impossible because we're all so very busy, but it's really not. Once you start taking time, deliberately protecting time, whether it's blocking it out on your calendar, and I think that's actually an important tactic, or simply committing to yourself and others that at a certain point, every day, every week, every month, every quarter, every year, and for each one of those, you're going to set aside a larger period of time. We're going to sit and really think about, what are we trying to accomplish? How do we best accomplish it? What needs to change? What will get us there faster, but faster in a good, sustainable, productive way? what are the things that are holding us back. And sometimes that's the going by default and just following the person to the left and the right. But when you take that time to sit, think, strategize, collaborate, get on the same page with the people around you, you really do become in a much better position to innovate, grow, avoid repetitive mistakes, I call them, regrettable repetitions. There's a lot that can be done by protecting time for thinking and planning and talking.
Well, in addition, in the book, and I had this conversation just the other day with somebody when they asked me kind of like, what you've been working on or what you're doing or stuff. And I paused for a second. I said, I'm trying to gain expertise in becoming a pivot artist.
Yeah.
You talk about pivot analysis, and you talk about impact. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So pivoting, it's very important to be thinking about pivots, pivot points, pivot opportunities. When I talk about leading through change, any organization that's facing change, which is every organization, is at a pivot point, right? Sometimes they're small pivot points, often they're pretty large. What I write about in the book is two different kinds of pivot points. And they're broad categories, and we can do a lot with them. One is pivotal successes. And by pivotal successes, I mean, what are those experiences, events, opportunities, et cetera, in one's life? And it could be going back to childhood. I'm a clinician by training, so I think the childhood stuff's pretty important in who we are today. Or it can be a pivot point among your team, in your company, in the industry. But what are those positive things that happened? You got a great education, you traveled internationally, you met some fascinating people, you invested wisely, you took a great job, you hired well. I could go on and on. Those are all, pivotal successes, and we can use those, one, to build confidence, and also success can always be replicated. So when you look at those things, and what is it that worked well there that I can bring to my company, bring to my career, bring to the people around me to accelerate success? That's one piece of it. The other half is what I call pivotal regrets. And again, it's broad. So pivotal regret is something that happened in one's life. And again, it can go back to childhood, or it could be part of your educational years or in your career, that somehow was negative. It may be that you made a poor decision, that you failed at something that you really wanted to succeed at. It could be something bad that happened to you. It could be something bad that happened to your company. This is a huge one. If we think about 9/11, right? That was a huge pivotal regret in not only out the United States, but across the globe. Not a regret because we created it or we made it happen, but a regret in the sense of it was something really negative that had a very powerful impact and can actually be used moving forward to make things better. So that's what I talk about, really looking at all the good, bad, and the ugly of the past and not getting stuck there, but figuring out how do we use this to grow and change and improve and be smarter, safer, better, more interesting moving forward.
Well, and if you wanted to get a little bit deeper in all of this, as you're talking, I started thinking about mindfulness. I mean, you mentioned things associated with mindfulness.
Yeah.
You started mentioning things associated with, strength analysis, strength understanding, and being able to leverage that, to go forward, because it's our strengths that actually propel us. If we focus on weaknesses, all we're doing is just making a bigger anchor, right? We're not going to move, so we have to be really mindful of doing that. And so when I start, thinking about the ways that you have broken down ways that people can, avoid the pitfalls, move forward. I mean, you've done it, pretty darn quickly, in the book, because I've actually seen, books where, authors and experts attempt to do that. And, they put together volumes and volumes, ultimately not distilling it down to what you've done here. So I really like the work that you've done with this. But when you start looking at the way that you've broken down the book, you have, a couple different parts. You have slow down, and then speed up, right? And then you culminate it in a list of tools, and we're going to go through those in a little bit. But when you start talking about the slow down piece to the speed up piece, because a lot of times, especially in our society, I've talked about this, we're like, hey, just give me the medication, man. Hey, just, maybe buy this, man. Hey, fire that person, hire that person, right? We make some unfortunate mistakes, that prevent us from actually ultimately getting to the point of acceleration. So when you look at the slow down piece to getting to the speed up piece, kind of give me an understanding of some timelines.
That's a good question. It's interesting because people don't often ask something that specific. I'm really glad you're asking that. It really does vary depending on the situation. So, for instance, often the work that I do is within a very large company. I'm working at the C-suite with the senior management. And so there's pressure to go fast, but there's really, such a great importance to slow down. So one of the ways, for instance, we do that is I might go in and meet with the CEO and the executive team for a day or two or three at the beginning of an engagement. And that's a tough slowdown because none of those people really wants to put away their laptop and their notifications and cancel meetings, or because everybody's very, very busy. But taking a few days to sit and get full clarity about what are the key priorities, what's the strategic direction, what's our vision, why are we here, what are we looking to achieve, and how do we really get clear that we are taking the most effective path forward. People are clear on who's going to do what, when, how they're going to help one another, clear away the obstacles. That's the kind of slowdown that actually can lead to almost immediate results. I mean, people can leave that session and start doing things differently right away. There are other situations where I might be working with an individual. For instance, I just had someone come to work with me who is the head of a surgery department at a very large university hospital system. And her slowdown is, she's at a point in her career where she may want to do something different. She really needs to take her time to explore what does she want her life to look like, how much more does she want to accomplish in her career, how does she strike the balance, she's still got children at home. So there are really a lot of things we can look at, and there's no urgency for her to make an immediate decision because she's got a great job, she's got a happy life. She's just really being proactive and looking forward to the next chapter.
Okay, when I start thinking about what you're talking about, I start, really getting to the point of, we have some strategic elements and issues that ultimately, from an organizational perspective, have to get down to tactical workflows and movement. And I've been talking about this a lot lately, where there's in almost all organizations, I would say in all organizations, there is a disconnect between the head and the feet. Now, the reality is the disconnection sometimes is just massive, but everybody's disconnected because there's so many environmental forces which caused it to occur, and not just the internal cultural pieces. And so when I start thinking about the head and the feet moving in concert with one another, so that we have that strategic alignment down at the tactical side. How is the work that you're doing up at that top level ultimately filtering its way down so that the head and the feet are moving together?
And the head and feet do have to move together 100%. You're completely right. What I found works very, very well is that when I'm working at that top of the organization level, and we're not only talking conceptually, about what does it mean to slow down, to speed up, and I'm providing them some very specific tools that they can utilize with their teams. We're making sure that there is a very practical and compelling message that is cascaded down and across throughout the organization. So for instance, if I'm working with the CEO and the management team, well, every one of those people has a set of people working, for them. And, because we're at such a high level, every one of those people has a team working for them and so on, right? So they're deep in their broad organizations. And so we're creating what is the messaging around things like staying crisply focused on priorities, helping the organization know what are those priorities, helping everyone know what are the things that have to come off their plate because they are no longer adding value or there simply isn't time to do them well now. Maybe they'll get done later. I have one tool called Now, Later, Never. Some things never get done because as exciting and cool as they may sound, they're just not really strategically important right now. But it's really the cascading of communication, the follow through. There has to be consistent, repeat communications. It cannot all stay up at the most senior level because that's just not the way organizations work. And I'll just add one last little piece, Jim. There also needs to be opportunity for people who are doing the work, quote, on the front lines, who are really have their hands, whether they're customer facing or they're creating product or they're doing R&D. They need to be able to bring information rapidly and quickly to the senior levels. So it's really a dynamic kind of conversation that needs to happen.
Well, yeah, right. So for me, as you're going through all of that, I'm starting to think about, practices and processes and frameworks and all of that probably just don't exist in a lot of organizations. I just came back from a conference where we were talking about many of these particular issues, and that especially on the front line, the reality is that they have to take care of each individual minute of every single day in regards to responding to interactions and requests and all of that. And so oftentimes they have their heads down. I mean, they're just getting the work in and out. However, when you start thinking about an organization accelerating, oftentimes the thing that's preventing them from doing that is the systems, the way the organization was built. I mean, it's hard for customers to be able to get served and get product and all of that. It's hard for employees to navigate the system, and ultimately it just slows it down. So 80% of the system, or 80% is the system issues. However, we focus in on the individuals just doing their tactical stuff and expecting it's going to fix things. So that means, going to what you're saying about all of that information about, hey, what's broken needs to filter up so that, again, in concert, the head and feet can move together so that those people at senior level can help those barriers be moved, can help with enablement. Everybody talks about that flipping of the pyramid where, the servants, are the executives, and they're the ones who are enabling the rest of the organization to move. How much of your work goes into flipping that pyramid?
I would say a fair amount of the work does. And there are a couple of ways this can happen. Sometimes it happens because I'm speaking directly with the employees who have that knowledge and that information, who are dealing with the everyday stressors and the difficulties, and maybe even who see the opportunities that, haven't yet made their way up to senior levels. So sometimes I get the opportunity to have those conversations, actually take a look at a warehouse floor, see what's going on. And that's really exciting, fun work. That's when you kind of really know what's happening in a company. And then I have, the fun of bringing that up to the senior levels and really making them open their ears, because, it's very easy for it to become a dynamic where at one level, well, it's got to happen this way. And at another level, people are saying, well, it isn't and it can't and it won't. And to create a sense of a unified organization. And I actually like to think of that, just in terms of my own way of thinking of a slow down to speed up organization where everyone is taking the time, not only to get everything off the to-do list and to, of course you have to get customer out to product and orders have to come in well and all of those things, but without the slowing down so that the right things are getting done by the right people at the right time, the communication is solid and strong, and that it's proactive rather than continually reactive and firefighting. All of those things are very common, and there's got to be there are ways to shift it and make all of that much better. And the whole organization thrives as a result.
Yeah, and that's exactly why, why I said that you have written a book which explains why I called the Fast Leader Show what I called it. It's not about the shortcut
That's right.
to the acceleration. And in fact, the shortcut is the long road. Because you're going to accelerate much faster. So it's like doing it right. And in order to help do it right, you talk about these 36 actions to accelerate success. And you've broken them down into essentially, I can call them pillars, you can call them, topic areas. What do you can tell us what you refer to them as, but they're called assess, align, acknowledge, assign, articulate, acquire, address, assist, ask, anticipate, and accentuate. And now here's the thing. Oftentimes I ask people, well, what's most important? The reality is that all of those are, because that is the slow down so that you can accelerate.
Yes, that's exactly right, Jim.
Perspective, I would dare to say that, they have to be followed in that order. So it's a step process, isn't it?
Yes, it is, but it doesn't have to be. So it's interesting. Sometimes I will meet with a large group of leaders. So, I was down in Miami about a year ago, and I met with the CEO and his executive leadership team, and then an entire layer of directors and managers below them. So, below within the organizational chart. Maybe there were 50 or 60 people there. And we're talking about the things that one can do that feel like slowing down, but they really are the path to getting things done faster, better, and with fewer mistakes and less overwhelm, which is an important piece of it. And so what I did was, I'll show you this really quickly. I've created this little deck of cards, and it's simply my slow down to speed up, 36 actions to accelerate. So everything that's in the back of the book, I put into this little set of cards, and there are 36 of them. And what we did with this particular group, people had a ton of fun with this, and you can do this in a lot of different ways with your team, with your company, is I just randomly put these cards out on people's desks and asked for volunteers to read a card and talk about ways that maybe they can or would like to implement this in their everyday. Not to confess that they haven't, but to say, hey, this is something that I really could benefit from, and maybe people could share ideas. So for instance, one card here says, address concerns. Discuss, address, and remedy concerns now to avoid trouble down the road. It's just, real simple little things. And you could take this one card and say, you know what? Why don't we set up a meeting at the end of the day? We'll take 15 minutes. Nobody's going to sit down because we all want to go home. We're going to stand up. We'll have our jackets on. And we're going to make sure that in those 15 minutes, we are going to call out all of the concerns of the day so that tomorrow morning, we all have some direction to hit the ground running. So, that's an example of one you can do really fast. You can certainly take more time to dive deeper. Another one, align with other stakeholders and business partners, right? So in an organization, this can also be with your customers, by the way, in an organization, unless you are, a one woman or one man shop, and even then not so much, you have to speak to other people. You have to talk about what are we doing? How quickly will we do it? What will we stop doing? Who's doing what? How will we measure success, etc. I'll give you just one more and we can move on, but there are plenty of these. One was address expectations. Ask your stakeholders, am I or are we meeting your expectations? Where are things going well and where do we need to change things a little bit? How can we revise so that we're all getting where we need to be more rapidly and with fewer errors and mistakes, and so we can preserve a really good acceleration. So again, this is just a way to make it really easy to use and reference those 36 actions to accelerate success. You can do them in an order, or you can just flip through and find the ones that seem most pertinent to you or your organization or your goal at a given time.
Well, and as you're talking, though, I start thinking about the fact that, we have conditioned response, meaning that, hey, this is kind of talking about we've always done things this way. We've always tried to, speed things up, and society pushes us that way. And there's so many factors that cause us to really display these behaviors. And it's just that, it's behaviors. So how do we, this is behavior modification you're talking about. That is, it's very hard to do. So when I start thinking about the transformation, how does that take place?
Well, I think there are at least two main pillars to make this happen. One is the internal transformation. And this is not an easy thing to do, but if you are like the people that I work with, and I'm sure you're this way, and I try to be this way, somebody who wants to be very effective, create success, create good outcomes, you have internalized a sense of pressure, do more, do faster, get more done, get better results. So there has to be a deliberate pause where you give yourself permission to think about things differently and to say, I'm willing to experiment with slowing down a little bit, with doing things a little differently. That's one piece. That's probably the hardest piece. The second piece is getting agreement with the people around you that we're going to try something different. And we're not married to it. And if it doesn't work in 2 weeks or 6 months or a year or whatever you agree to, then we'll consider it maybe either it was a failure or we have to try something and tweak it a little bit. But if you get agreement with your coworkers, with your boss, with your customers, that going faster all the time is not effective and does not lead to true transformation, and you're all willing to be in this experiment together, that's where you really begin to see change happen. And I will tell you honestly, when I bring these concepts and tools to the customers and clients that I'm working with, people are so relieved that they have permission as well as a set of tools to make a change.
Needless to say, when we start talking about going through this activity, putting forth all of this effort, we need a lot of inspiration in order to be able to do that. One of the things that we like on the show is to focus in on quotes. Do you have a quote or two that you like that you can share?
Oh my gosh. There are so many good ones. I'll tell you one that I come across all the time, and you've probably heard it. And I think it comes from Richard Branson. It is attributed to Richard Branson, and I may be slightly paraphrasing, but he poses the question, well, what if we train our people so well that they leave us? And by train, it could be develop, take care of, give opportunities. And the second part of it is, well, what if we don't and they stay? So investing in one's people, investing in yourself, investing in change, it's not the cost that many people think it is. It truly is investment with huge returns, both on a business and on a personal level. And so I think that one's a pretty important one.
Yeah, it is. And I think you hit on an important point. It's like, don't wait on the organization to give it to you. I mean, you need to seek it and do it yourself if it's not being provided.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I do have people come to me sometimes. I mean, often I will work, an organization will come to me, a business will come to me, but more and more I'm seeing really smart, proactive people saying, I want to be either more effective, or I want to navigate the next change, or I'm going into a new organization and I really want to hit the ground running. I don't want to make the mistakes that will be very difficult to repair inadvertently, and they're investing in themselves, and it's great, exciting work, and it always pays tremendous dividends.
Most definitely. However, I mean, when you start talking about all this and people coming to you and things like that, all of us have to get over certain humps in order to, learn some lessons and hopefully get going in the right direction. And one of the ways that we actually also learn about avoiding certain humps and getting over our own is when others share theirs. So is there a hump that you got over that you can share?
Oh, yes, absolutely. The idea of pivot points really came to me when I was reflecting on my own career path. I was delivering a presentation to a group of other consultants and advisors, and wanted to share with them some of what got me from, early years of being a school psychologist to my clinical work to today, where I really have the great opportunity to work with, people in all kinds of companies around the world. And some of the pivots have been personal. One was I lost my dad about 10 years ago, and he's very smart, very inspiring man. And so there was some, deep personal loss that I had to work my way through. And some of the pivots have been simply, the ins and outs of the economy and the way people hire experts such as myself. And so, over the course of time, like any business owner, sometimes things have been thriving and wonderful. Sometimes there have been changes, and each time there's a change or a dip, I recreate and I find new ways to add value and to hopefully be helpful to my clients in all sorts of new manners.
So I would dare to say that, the whole pivot exercise is something that we really should be doing on a regular basis for ourselves.
100%, because, we continue to grow and change all the time. I mean, it's interesting. My early training as a clinician, I always thought of those first 5 years. Your personality is set. Life is set by age 5. And frankly, a lot of who we are is set by age 5, but most assuredly not all of it. And we are learning more and more the resilience of the brain and the impact of ongoing life experience. And some of that is internal change, some of that is family, some of that is the work that we're doing, some of that is the broader world around us. So yes, to be periodically taking time where you are thinking through all of what you've been through, how you're getting through it, where you want to go next, what your personal vision is, really, really time very well spent.
So with that in mind, and you start talking about pivoting and moving in a certain direction, you start talking about iteration and creativity and all of those things to help you continue to go. When I start thinking about that, I start thinking about goals that we need to create. And so for you, what's one goal that you have?
One goal that I have is to, and I hate to use the word balance because I don't think it's really quite a fair, I'll use the word integration, is to integrate the growth of the work that I do professionally, to continue to work with exciting, interesting executives, in companies far and wide, and also be very present as my children grow and expand, and my daughter finishes college, and my son continues to pursue his music, and all of those sorts of things to really integrate success, involvement, engagement across the board.
And the Fast Leader Legion wishes you the very best. Now, before we move on, let's get a quick word from our sponsor. An Even Better Place to Work is an easy-to-use solution that gives you a continuous diagnostic on employee engagement along with integrated activities that will improve employee engagement and leadership skills in everyone. Using this award-winning solution is guaranteed to create motivated, productive, and loyal employees who have great work relationships with their colleagues and your customers. To learn more about An Even Better Place to Work, visit beyondmorale.com/better.
All right, here we go, Fast Leader Legion. It's time for the
Hump Day Hoedown.
Okay, Liz, the Hump Day Hoedown is the part of our show where you give us good insights fast. So I'm going to ask you several questions, and your job is to give us robust yet rapid responses that are going to help us move onward and upward faster. Liz Bywater, are you ready to hoe down?
I'm ready.
All right. So what do you think is holding you back from being an even better leader today?
Making sure that I am continually clearing things off my plate that are either non-essential, non-value added, or I can give to somebody else.
And what is the best leadership advice you have ever received?
Be the leader that is most true and authentic to who you are. Don't try to replicate somebody else's style.
And what is one of your secrets that you believe contributes to your success?
I think one of the things that contributes to my success is the fact that I am fortunately able to form really good, long-lasting, meaningful relationships with my clients. And so we're able to work together over the course of many years and many opportunities.
And what is one of your tools that helps you lead in business or life?
So one of my tools is to make sure that I don't try to do everything myself and that I have very good colleagues and a mentor of my own that I will work with over many years.
Okay, Liz, what would be one book that you'd recommend to our Legion? And it could be for any genre. Of course, we're going to put a link to Slow Down to Speed Up on your show notes page as well.
You know, I really like this book, Sapiens. It is a fascinating read. It is a very easy read for someone who is not, thoroughly scientific. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's very interesting. And I'm not quite through it yet, but Sapiens is a terrific book to pick up.
Okay, Fast Leader Legion, you can find links to that and other bonus information from today's show by going to fastleader.net/Liz Bywater. Okay, Liz, this is my last Hump Day Hoedown question. Imagine you have the opportunity to go back to the age of 25 and take the knowledge and skills that you have back with you. But you know what? You can't take it all. You can only choose one. So what skill or piece of knowledge would you take back with you and why?
Oh, 25. That's an interesting age. I would take back the knowledge that although life has ups and downs and pivots, if you are strong and resilient and confident in yourself and you remain connected to important people in your life, good things will come.
Liz, I had fun with you today. How can people get in touch with you?
A couple of different ways. So my website is full of freebies and access to the book and contact information. And that's simply my name, lizbywater.com. And Bywater is just the way it sounds. So it's Liz B-Y-Water. You can find me on Twitter. It's Dr. Liz Bywater. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just Google my name. You'll find lots of good ways to get in touch with me.
Liz Bywater, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom. The Fast Leader Legion honors you and thanks you for helping us get over the hump.
Thank you for joining me on the Fast Leader Show today. For recaps, links from every show, special offers, and access to download and subscribe, if you haven't already, head on over to fastleader.net so we can help you move onward and upward faster.